Why do we feel sometimes some artists they are way ahead of their time? Is it the talent? Is it confidence? Or is it because the world around them hasn't fully caught up yet? Today we're exploring the story of one artist who changed the East African and Tanzanian pop music looked, how it sounded, and how it was felt. And it's none other than iconic Vanessa Mdee. Hey listeners, welcome to the Through Archives podcast, Conversations Beyond Thoughts. So, was Vanessa truly ahead of her time in Tanzanian music culture, or was the industry simply not ready for that level of creativity, branding, and the experimentation she represented? What made Vanessa Mdee be felt different? I would say when she entered the industry during that period, she started the music around 2012, 2013 period. That time, many of the mainstream Tanzanian hits were created or centered around familiar bongo flavor structures and safer branding. But her presentation felt a little bit more internationally influenced. When you look, for example, at her songs, her first hit, Closer, when you look at songs like Hesh Madam, Nobody But Me, when you look at production of those songs, they had cleaner crossover production and stronger pop structure in it. So you can already see how she was trying to differentiate herself in terms of production of her songs. In terms of her visuals, they were more polished in a way that it resembled global Afropop and Western pop artists. I remember when she started her career, that time, she would usually work with a famous South African director, Justin Campos, and you can see he would really take the creative direction of Vanessa and really deliver very good visuals. And that really made Vanessa visual so intentional, and they were different. Also, what sold her, it was her styling, stage confidence, and interviews felt really intentional. When you look at Vanessa's interview, the way she handles the interview, the direction of the interview, the way she answers the questions, it was very media trained. You can see that this is a kind of artist who really knows herself and what she wants to represent. At that time, that level of branding wasn't yet common among many Tanzanian female artists. So we could say her visuals were intentional, her branding felt modern, her performances had confidence, even the way she carried herself felt different from what audience were used to see. Yeah, so you can see when you see Vanessa, you don't see just a musician, but you see lifestyle. And that's what really sold her to be a crossover of an artist. So, did people fully understand what she was trying to build, or were the audiences still attached to safer, more familiar sound and identity? If we compare Vanessa's artistic direction to the mainstream sound of that era, I would say the differences become very clear. Her music blended a lot of influences beyond traditional bongo flavor. The production choices felt global, the visual felt curated, and above all, the fashion choices felt deliberate. It wasn't just music anymore. And that's why I said a lot of the time for an artist, it has to go beyond your music. It's about creating identity, creating a brand. It was storytelling, but sounding international automatically mean an artist is ahead of their time. Well, that sometimes I would say it's debatable, but I would say in a way, Vanessa was really good at experimenting creatively, especially in how she combined music and image. Instead of relying on local identity markers, Vanessa built an artist persona that could move different African audiences. When you put Vanessa in East Africa, in Southern African market, in West African market, she could really fit in all those kind of market and the modes. You just have to tweak a little bit of things, but in general, Vanessa could really fit in all those kind of markets. That's why she was marketable above the four corners of East Africa. So Vanessa seemed to understand early on in her career that African artists could compete visually and commercially beyond their home countries. She was like comparable to artists including Theo Savage, Yemi Alade, who also in their own right mix African identities with global presentation. So, as an audience, did we fully appreciate at the time? Not completely. Many artists criticized for being too different and then praised years later after culture shift. Prime examples right now, like Wizkid was criticized by some fans for changing his sounds internationally. Also, Burna Boy was once called to international audiences. I would say most of the time we do resist change before eventually accepting it. It means they are willing to take risks what others are afraid to take. Also, another important take, I would say, it was the industry limitations at the time, is whether the music industry itself was ready to support experimentation. Because industries often reward what already works. They want to follow a certain kind of formula: safe songs, familiar branding, predictable success, and especially for female artists, public image is often controlled more heavily than their male counterparts. That's the truth. Labels prefer marketable personalities over creative freedom. And I always say this is one of the things that really kills artists in their craft, not being able to give them creative freedom and the type of music they want to make. Their image, lyrics, the branding, everything. If everything is being controlled by the label, and most of the time label do control them, it get to the point where an artist become burnout because you're doing everything in some kind of formula. You don't really challenge yourself to go out of the Pandora box. Media pressure can also push artists towards several identities while asking for originality at the same time. Kind of contradicting, but that's how it is. So maybe Vanessa wasn't too different. The system itself was uncomfortable with big difference at the time. So not always immediately, many influential artists were misunderstood early on. Female artists are often expected to carefully balance talent, image, public behavior, marketability much more heavily than male artists. I will say that Vanessa's confidence and polished presentation may have challenged expectations of the audiences unconsciously had for female artists in Tanzania during that era. For example, Kid Cudi, emotional vulnerability influenced an entire generation after earlier criticism if you have listened to his music and his craft. Often culture catches up later because sometimes supporting of experimentation is really hard, especially when you look at our music, our industry, society, cultures. People often say they want originality, but many times the biggest support goes to what feel familiar and easy to understand. Artists who experiment face criticism at first and appreciation later. So when audiences look back years later and finally say she was ahead of her time, yeah, she was really ahead of her time. I can remember also when she had done an interview, her hit Never Ever, during an interview, and she said that she wasn't going to perform in Dubai for the One Africa Festival, but she's going to Gabon to do the jazz version of the song Never Ever. I was like, that's so cool. You can see this is a kind of artist who's pushing herself in terms of creative direction of what her music wanted to be, and also Ghana's different type of fans. You have to channel yourself out of your comfort zone. She was operating in a version of Tanzanian pop culture that hasn't fully arrived yet. That's why one of my main concern with the audience, Tanzanian audience and East African audience, they would also like criticize her and say like she was trying to be better than anybody else. No, it wasn't about being better. It's about knowing what you want, how to better your craft, having a better marketing and branding, and differentiate yourself from everybody else. Because when you're different, people will notice. It simply means seeing possibilities before other do. Some artists are not fully appreciated in the moment they exist. The culture needs time grow to their ideas. Yeah. So not necessarily because she was better than everybody else, but because she understood music was becoming global, branding matters deeply. It's not always about the music if you really want to make money, because music industry is really cutthroat. You need to have a strong brand. Visual matters, especially in right now. People want visuals. Crossover appeal matters. You need to have fans from different regions. If you want to go global, international appeal matter as much as sounds. Many African artists now build career using exact same ideas. I would say Vanessa, all what she had done early on her career for the female artist. I think she was building a blueprint. New younger generation right now. She built a blueprint for them in terms of image, styling, how to brand yourself, the visuals, making identity for yourself, the sounds. Many African artists trying to look at her blueprint, run with it. That is why people revisit her career and ask whether she represented a future version of African pop culture before it fully arrived at a time and moment where you really enjoyed her music, you enjoyed her visuals, it take you in a time of nostalgia. This girl was really doing something amazing at that time. People weren't aware of it or they weren't ready to see it. She really give it all and there is nothing else for us. And she's going to go down in history as one of the most iconic, legendary artists in East Africa pop music. So on that note, thank you for joining me. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and let your thoughts become conversations.